Hey there, welcome back to another episode of the Hi-Fi Preschool and Kids Weekly Training Podcast. My name is Jeremy, glad to be with you this week. With me here in the studio, I've got Crystal Mazuka and Rachel Raquelme. What's up, ladies?
Hey, Jeremy.
Hey, Jeremy.
Well, I'm glad to have both of you in the studio today. This is a special edition of the podcast because it doesn't happen a whole lot, but every now and then preschool and kids need to be on separate Bible stories. And that's where we have found ourselves today in this episode where the preschoolers have one Bible story, the kids have a different Bible story, same truth. We're still anchored on that same truth of I am set apart and God helps me obey, but they do have different Bible stories. So if you're a kids ministry leader, you can check us out in the other episode that's going to be about kids ministry leader, about Hi-Fi Kids. In this one, though, we're going to be specifically just talking about Hi-Fi Preschool. And so we are all the way God helps me obey. And in this truth, we are really trying to help preschoolers start to grasp this idea of obedience and what does this look like and what does it take. And so, last week we talked a little bit about for Easter, we talked about the crucifixion, resurrection, and the Easter story. And this week we're jumping a little bit back. So we're going into the Old Testament and we're going to be talking about King Solomon. And the one of the things that sets up this episode, or it is the episode, but the whole session that we're talking about is our theme verse. And so for preschoolers, it's, "You are my friends if you do what I command," from John 15:14. And this is again, it really ties into that God helps me obey, because we need to help kids and preschoolers in this case, we need to help them start to understand what obedience looks like in terms of having a relationship with Jesus. And so when we shift into this Bible story in this session, we're going to be dealing a little bit about the thoughts behind our obedience, and we'll get to that in just a second. Crystal, Rachel, let me throw a question to you as we get started here. As a reminder, listeners, we use this question as a way to get to know us a little bit, but also just as an example of something you can use in your huddles with your volunteers, something that you can use that you've heard us talk about, and you can use that in your ministry as well. So here's the question for this week as we're talking about God helping me with our thoughts and this idea of wisdom. Here's the question. If you could immediately have total wisdom and understanding in one thing, what would you choose?
Jeremy, can I say two things? I want to say two things because I can't pick between the two.
You always can say two things, yes.
Okay, so first off, how great would it be to have total wisdom and understanding in all languages?
Ooh.
Like to be able to talk to everybody in the language that they speak and to be able to understand what they are saying. I think that is awesome. I took Spanish in high school. I was terrible at it. But it's amazing the little bit that I remember that I've been able to use sometimes with Spanish speakers, and they're always so appreciative. Mm-hmm. But man, I would love to just be able to like, oh, look, I'm in Germany. I can totally speak German. Oh, look, I'm in South Africa. I can totally speak Xhosa. Like I would love that. But then the other one is I would love to have total wisdom and understanding in playing the piano. I have tried many times over the years. It just doesn't stick. But man, I would love to just be able to read music and have my little fingers fly across the keys and impress everybody with my skills. So those are my two that I would pick: every language in the world and the piano.
Yeah, just a short request there, not too much.
Request.
Yeah, I resonate with both of those. Rachel, what about you?
Well, now that I heard Crystal's, I really want to say languages. Because mine was really, really, really goofy. We're coming out of March, and everyone's obsessed with basketball and March Madness and all the brackets. I don't understand them. I'm terrible at it. I don't follow it. And I was going to say maybe be able to understand that whole process.
That's funny.
Just have a deep understanding analytics of college basketball.
Maybe be able to fill out a bracket and not be last, every time.
So, Rachel, let me tell you though, I fill out a bracket every year, but I do it and I have it give me like just fill it out for me. What are the top analytics and just fill it out for me. And I typically get between first and third every year. So just so you know, there was a little workaround. But it would
Good
be
to
great to
know.
be one of the people who could do it.
That's funny. So I don't resonate with that one because I couldn't care less. So every year in March, when we were talking about March Madness and all that stuff, like I enjoy the game of basketball. I want to be playing. I don't follow any basketball. I mean, people at Lifeway, like they're having these brackets, and I'm like, I literally couldn't care less about that. I don't care enough to have conversations with people about it. Like it is just not important to me at all. So I guess if you're in that environment and like people around people who that's important to, then yeah, I can see how that would be super valuable. So when we start thinking about this idea of wisdom and understanding, and by way of kind of helping us get a shift a little bit, thinking about the Bible story, when we're talking about God helps us obey with our preschoolers, all of that obedience really starts in our thought processes. And so that's one of the reasons why we're kind of starting here in a way to say that God helps me with my thoughts, is because
Mm,
if preschoolers are going to be able to obey and follow any commands of Jesus, there has to be salvation and all of those things. But as far as them personally, they have to go through this idea of their thoughts, and like we have to choose what to do differently. And so that shifts us into our Bible story. Rachel, let me come to you, because in our Bible stories, we're talking, and we are in a couple of different passages here. We know that can be a little bit challenging, but just as a ministry leader, focus kind of on one of those, or you can show all three of them if you're working with older preschoolers. But we're in First Kings and Second Chronicles and Proverbs in a little bit. So Rachel, as we're talking about Solomon, and Solomon asked God for wisdom, and God answered this question and gave Solomon wisdom. How does this Bible story start to help us plant some seeds with preschoolers, to know that God helps them with their thoughts and cares about their thoughts too?
Yeah. Um, that is, this Bible story is really strong in that way, which is one of the reasons that we kind of went a separate direction from kids this week, because it was just a strong place to land to begin to think about thoughts for preschoolers, kind of where they are developmentally. In our Bible story, Solomon asked God to give him wisdom because he wanted to obey God and live in a way that honored him and pleased him. And so God granted Solomon wisdom. He helped him know how to love him and live his way and follow him. And so throughout this story, we see that there are ways we can honor and please God. And one of those ways is through our thoughts. And so we want preschoolers to know God doesn't just care about the things that others hear, our words, or the things that others see, our actions, but He cares about everything we think, which can be confusing sometimes because preschoolers may think, well, no one else knows what I think. They can't hear my
mm,
thoughts. You know, those are private. Why does it matter if it doesn't hurt anyone else? And
mhm,
so the reason we want to teach them this Bible story and begin to lay a foundation for why our thoughts matter is because we don't want to just teach them to change outward behaviors, the things that people can
mhm,
hear, the things that people can see. And in this Bible story through Solomon, we see that our heart matters, our motivations matter. We want to love and follow God, even when people can't hear what we're saying or thinking or see it. We want to be changed internally, not just in the things that people see and hear. And so we want to not just have behavior modification, but we want transformation. And so
mhm,
this Bible story is a really strong Bible story to remind preschoolers and or even teach them for the first time that God cares about everything about them. Not just what other people can see and hear, but even the things that go on within us, like our thoughts, which ultimately only we know and God knows.
mhm,
Rachel, that's super helpful, to think about, that for preschoolers who might think that thoughts are only private because no one can hear them, to start to shift their minds, to start to introduce, again, we're planting these seeds for things that they may not understand fully yet, but they're going to understand later. Crystal, let me come to you. What else can you help us to think about in terms of why it matters that we go ahead and start teaching preschoolers and laying these seeds now?
One of the cool things about this Bible story is that you see that God was pleased with Solomon before he actually did anything with the wisdom. God was pleased with his heart and his desire to say, I want to be wise.
Mm.
And I think that it's a great opportunity to encourage preschoolers that God is not just looking at you, waiting to see if you do the right thing or if you do the wrong thing, but he really, really cares about what's going on inside of you. Preschoolers are such black and white thinkers. And it's amazing that we kind of grow out of that, but I think all of us still want that, right? Like, how much would we just love it, even though it didn't work in the Bible, but a checklist, God, okay, I've got a checklist of everything that I'm going to do, and I've got things that I'm not going to do. And then at the end of the day, that will be pleasing to you. And this is an opportunity to let preschoolers know that when it comes to obeying God, it isn't just what we do, but he cares so much about what led to what we do. He doesn't want us to just obey for the sake of obeying. He wants us to obey
Mm-hmm.
out of a heart that loves him and out of a heart that worships him because he loves us so much. Um, your parents, your grandparents, your guardians, they don't want you to just obey them because you're afraid of getting in trouble. They hope that you would obey them because you love and respect them, and that's a way to show that you love and respect. And so it really starts with a heart and a mind change, which of course can be tricky for preschoolers because they're like, what do you mean my heart? Like my heart that beats in my brain that thinks like. But it's starting a conversation that I believe will help set preschoolers up to, as they start to grow in this understanding of how who God is and how we work and what we really mean when we talk about thoughts and hearts and attitudes, that they will have already learned this idea that God cares so much about what's going on inside of us, that he wants all of our obedience, all of our outside actions to start inside of us. And so knowing that these are kind of tricky conversations to have with preschoolers, but also knowing that having them now will help set them up for success in the future.
That's super helpful. And Rachel, we're gonna kind of just piggyback right off of that, keep this same kind of train of thought going, because developmentally we know where preschoolers are. And you alluded to it a little bit earlier, Crystal alluded to some, I've alluded to some, that we know that where preschoolers are developmentally, that they're not going to, there's going to be pieces of this that are deeper than they can get. And we do know that. So what kind of tips can we give our ministry leaders and volunteers to help as we approach a session like this, where we're talking about something that's invisible, that's unseen, talking about our thoughts? What
Mm.
are some tips that we can give?
Yeah, because thoughts are tough for preschoolers, especially for those preschoolers that think out loud. You know,
Mm.
they express everything going on inside externally and don't quite have an internal monologue. That was me as a child, and maybe still me sometimes. And it can be hard, you know, to help them understand like this inner world of our thoughts. And so I think that defining thoughts and really explaining what thoughts are, not just once, but each
Mm.
time we kind of
Yeah.
talk about it and revisit it throughout the session is going to be really, really helpful. The way we're defining it in the session content, our thoughts are the things we think, the things that are kind of internal and inside. And so explaining that and explaining our thoughts aren't necessarily the things we say with our mouths. And so I think defining them, talking about it, gauging your preschoolers as you're teaching to see kind of like,
Hmm.
is this landing? Is this hitting? You know, listening to their answers, watching their expressions, and not being afraid to go back and revisit it and explain it again if needed, instead of just kind of rolling on with the content, because it's going to be hard to grasp the rest of the content if you don't grasp this foundational element. And
Hmm.
so I think really gauging your group and watching them is going to be a great way to help this week and to teach them. I also think our super clue helps us dial in on thoughts a little bit this week. And it kind of brings it to help them understand it in a tangible way. It's a thinking emoji, and so it's an image that gives you that visual to kind of understand thoughts. And we're explaining the thinking emoji this way by saying, when you see a thinking emoji, you can see it's thinking very hard, and it can remind us that we can think about happy and good things, but sometimes we think about sad and unkind things.
Mm,
And so the exciting thing is that God helps us with our thoughts, and He wants us to obey Him all the way. And that includes thinking about things that honor Him and show love to other people. And so, to just not be afraid to kind of stop, answer questions, and revisit things as you go throughout the session content, I think is going to be really, really helpful this week for preschoolers developmentally.
mm. I love what you said, Rachel, about kind of responding to where they're at. I can just picture asking the kids on in your group, on your team, like, what do you think it means that God helps us with our thoughts? And a kid saying, "Oh, I have thoughts. I hear my voice talking in my head all the time." And another kid says, "What do you mean? I don't hear a voice in my head." And allowing them to sort of express, what do you think that is? And then helping them make connections, whether it's that we're using metaphors or saying, okay, well, the same way that you described it as like it's a voice in your head, and you described it as it's a feeling in your heart. It's kind of a combination of all of those things, but we can all know. And so, really allowing, I think, preschoolers to express themselves and how they're interpreting what they're hearing, and what they even think regarding thoughts is really good. Sometimes we can feel like we have to have every single answer and just have that one thing, but like, how can I talk to you, Rachel, in a way that's going to make sense to you? And how can I talk to you, Jeremy, in a way that's going to make sense to you? And that's one of the things that I love about this setup of Hi-Fi, is that we have those opportunities to have those one-on-one conversations. It might not happen during the small talks portion, but it might happen while you're doing a craft or doing a game. A kid is working on a coloring page, and you get to sit next to them and say, "Hey, what do you, like? How would you describe thoughts?" And being able to have those conversations. And so, just realizing that even as we continue to sort of give this definition every time, that we can also make way for those one-on-one conversations to help kids make sense of it in a way that is specific to them.
Very good. Very great. Helpful tips there. Ministry leaders, I hope that helps you as you are going into this session. And as you navigate those conversations, like Rachel mentioned, we, this is one where we don't want to just say something and then move on. We may need to
Yeah.
come back and come back to that definition of thoughts, and just remind our preschool, these are things that we don't see. And so those are some good tips, and don't be afraid to come back to those things throughout your session. Rachel, Crystal, thanks again for another great episode here. And as we go into this session with our preschoolers, all the way God helps me obey, ministry leaders, we hope that this has been helpful to you, and we hope that Hi-Fi Preschool as a resource is going to continue to serve you well this weekend, as we strive to do every single weekend. Until next episode, thanks for listening. We'll check in with you soon.